All right, I think we can start. So what we'll do is we'll start with a quick show of hands on who is in IoT product management today. Is there anyone who is in product management? Let me start. Okay, already a product manager? Okay, most of you. Any aspiring product managers who want to get into product management? Okay, IoT product management and product management. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll break the session in three parts. I'll give a brief idea on what is IoT and what I'm seeing are the big key verticals in IoT. The second piece is personas in IoT product management, because I believe we are all looking forward to who is a target segment, target persona in the IoT space. And finally, with the key trends which I am seeing in the industry for IoT itself. So we'll break it in three parts. First one, brief intro on IoT, IoT personas for product management, and the trends. With that, why the IoT boom? What is driving the IoT thing? Yes, there is connectivity. Yes, there is a lot of sensing and data to be done. But for what? For who? So the key insight here is there's a lot of data being generated, and there is a thought, and you have seen a lot of these charts from McKinsey and a lot of these consulting an analyst firm for what the data ramp is, how many dollars you can make. But the key insight is each of that is different. The amount of data typically will be generated from a person or a human is around is order of magnitude smaller than a factory or a thing, a number of things you have in the factory. So that's very important, because if you look at it, this gives you a key insight on which are the verticals which will be more important as we go for different IoT products and services. And we'll touch on it. But this is a very important slide on what is generating data and how much, by what amount. So before we dive into, let's see what the end-to-end IoT entails for any vertical. This is true for most of the verticals. So typically you have a bunch of devices, be it on humans, devices in home, in factory, in a building, on a car. There are a bunch of sensors and devices. The second is the network. The data flows from the end device to the cloud using a network. And the network typically today is wired, and it's getting more and more onto networks like LTE and in future 5G, which is the promise for IoT. So you have the devices, they connect to the cloud platform using a network, and then the core piece of the platform itself. There is a bunch of services from device management to connectivity, reporting and analytics, security and compliance. So you can read through it, but the platform is where the magic happens today. And we'll get to trends and why I'm saying today. And finally, you have the apps, is where the user interacts. And the user can be end user, like in your home, or it can be a factory manager or factory floor manager in the industrial use cases, a doctor or a nurse in the medical use cases. They typically interact through the whole system and the device finally through a mobile app or a web app. And there are other ways you can directly interact with the device, but typically it's through an apps. Any questions? We can make this interactive. Any questions so far on what entails the IoT and where we're heading with it? Okay. All right, I'm going to just plug in a little bit on what I am doing, and then we'll shift gears on personas and other things. So this is what I'm doing in my job, which is we offer an end-to-end platform from the devices piece to the cloud and interoperable with other clouds. And this is similar to what you saw on the previous slide. We provide devices, the network is wired typically, and we do have LTE and cellular gateways, but it's mostly wired. And there is a cloud which provides all the services and features. And finally, it's open and interoperable, which connects with other clouds, including AWS, Azure, which are IaaS as a service. This is what Samsung provides, and I'm not going to talk about Samsung in any of the other slides. All right, so what are the key verticals today people are focusing on? And the three big ones which keep coming up are smart home, with the smart thing devices, or The gateways in houses, the routers, the voice assistants, all of it is targeted for the smart home. Smart buildings, lighting, and connectivity for the whole building is super important. And the big pickup is the smart factories. There's a ton of use cases for smart factories, and companies like GE and PTC are big time into smart factories itself. All right. The other verticals which are ramping up are transportation services, and this is because of the automobiles and the autonomous vehicles, the ramp. So we have a lot of initiatives to track the sensing the whole truck itself or the car, and the temperature for a car which is taking the relevant things to different places. The setup in a typical transportation is you have a bunch of sensors on the car. Again, the same model, what we saw on the initial slide. You have the devices, in this case, the sensors in a truck. You have the cloud, and not all data is sent to the cloud in this case. It is filtered based on the use case and the value proposition for the transportation business. And finally, there's analytics and across the whole fleet, and there's a fleet management and all those different services available for the transportation solution. Similarly, the other field which is ramping up, other than the initial three which we saw, smart home, building, and factories, is a health solution. In a health solution, you have, again, there are two entities here. One is the individual end consumer, and there is a hospital chain through the doctors and the whole chain itself. And we'll dig into a little bit detail on that. I'm going to build the slide because the ticker doesn't work. Okay. So in this case, typically, unlike the transportation solution, the gateway doesn't talk to the cloud directly. Typically, there is a phone as a gateway. That's what we call, which is all the metrics and data is being first transferred to the app on the phone through a Bluetooth, and that is then transferred to the cloud. And obviously, there's a ton of folks who want to get this data, including the insurance companies, the doctors, the EMF, and all those entities which get the data from the cloud. And this is all HIPAA regulated. There's HIPAA compliance in the cloud. Even what I do, the cloud, which is one of my product, is HIPAA compliant. You have to be HIPAA compliant to play in the health solution space. All right, we'll switch gears onto what are the typical personas for IoT, end-to-end IoT platform. Now, these personas are, before we dive into it, and I'll go in detail for a couple of personas in the next few slides. But the important thing to consider is there are two dimensions to this. The first is the verticals, and the second is the stage in the whole process. Either are you in development phase of an IoT product or service, the manufacturing, or is it the release and deployment? So there are three phases here, and each of the personas vary a little bit depending on which vertical you are. So we saw at least 5 verticals before, which is home, building, industrial, transportation, and health. Each of these personas vary a little bit or a lot depending on which vertical your product or service is focused on. And then we'll double click on a few of them. So in the development phase, you have the business owner. That's the most important persona you as a product manager, you need to target. And a business owner, and this is a B2B business owner, is a person who's a champion in their organization who's going to say, I want to connect an existing product, or I want to bring out a new service to the market which is connected and analyzes and gets data for the IoT. So if you are a platform or if you are providing IoT services, your target market and the most important person who's going to pay you is the business owner. And that's the one which the sales org is going to target, the business owner. The next set of personas in the development phase are these developers. Any product or product you develop will be targeted to the person who's going to use it at the end of the day is a developer. And developers are in 3 flavors. As we saw in the initial end-to-end IoT, developers can be embedded on the device side. They can be on the cloud side, who develop the look and feel what the device is going to do. That's a device profile developer. And then there's the application developer, in-house or external, who's going to develop the mobile app or the web app. So this is the development phase, and the products are targeted to these personas. The second one is the manufacturing itself. Once the product is developed, you have to manufacture it. So then, that goes typically to an ODM or OEM. So which is most of the time in China these days, where you actually manufacture the device, contract manufacturer, and a fleet manager who's going to manage all the devices once they are in the field. And finally, once the product is released or service is released, there is an end user who's going to onboard the device and start using the device. At the same time, there is a relationship between owner and a shared user. Let's say in the home use case, there is an owner who buys the device, installs it on the app and uses it, but at the same time, you might want to share with your spouse or your kids. So there is an owner and a shared user concept for each of the verticals. So these are typically the personas for all the different verticals, what I've seen and what the industry, the product you might want to focus on. In development, manufacture, release. Now we'll double click on a few of them, like a business owner, a developer, and end user, on to see how they vary depending on the vertical you're focused on. The first one is a business owner. Now who's a business owner? So business owner is a person who would want to create a product or a solution. For example, let's take industrial use case. You are a factory floor manager. You want to connect your whole factory floor. You want to connect the robots. You want to connect the automation train and all the different components in the sensing and the thing. The way you would go about it is the 2 ways. Either you build everything yourself in-house, or you buy through a system integrator or third-party solution, right? Now for this, what we have seen is most of these factory floor managers try to do both. Some folks who have a big, if they want to invest everything and own that, like GE, they did all of it in-house. At the same time, they had their Predix platform, which was given out for folks who want to actually automate their whole factory. So there's a build versus buy, but from a product management perspective, the customers who are important, again, when you're selling a platform, are the ones who want to buy the whole solution for your different factory floor itself. The next one is a fleet manager. And this persona comes into play when we can take the same industrial example or a building use case where a fleet manager would manage the whole set of sensors and services in a building. For example, this building, you have the projector, you have a temperature control, lights, and even the door sensors. Many of the buildings which we target our customer, they want to connect the whole building itself. And for that, you want to have a single pane of dashboard where you can manage your whole building and every single floor on it, get the data and analyze for each of those buildings what is happening within a building. So one of the key personas is to provide, like for example, OTA. You might want to patch a security patch for all the devices within a building. So a fleet manager dashboard is one of the products you as a product manager want to provide, where you can update all the devices within a building with a security patch. Very important. This persona is super important once the device or set of devices are shipped to the field. The next is the application developer. Again, this persona can be in-house or external. Many of the companies who are service providers or service integrators, they would have a mobile and a web app, which is built in-house, and then they provide it to, let's say, a factory or a building manager, or in case of home use cases, you have the apps available on the app store. So this is pretty straightforward. This developer is going to use SDKs, the tools, and all the different resources to actually automate and provide a neat experience for you to use the products and services offered. And finally, the end user itself. The end user, finally, the end user. The end user here again depends on if it's a home use case. The end user is again us. We're going to use it at home. Versus if your target industry or vertical is a building, then it's a building manager. In an industry case, it's a factory floor manager, and so on. So this persona is important when you want to think about how the product or service you offer will be used by the end user itself. And this is the owner persona. You also have a shared persona where you share, let's say in a hotel use case, you want to share the room access for a day or two with the person who is staying at the hotel. So there's a extension to this persona where this persona will share some of the access rights and permissions with another persona, which is shared persona. I'm not going to go in detail with the shared persona. So the owner is very important when you are building your product and service. Any questions on the personas? Have you seen a variation of what in IoT use case or enterprise use case?
I'm just trying to understand. So you said the most important persona is your business owner, but I mean, like, if you're trying to, I'm trying to understand the whole development process. But if you're building an IoT device, the end user seems to be kind of getting to the needs that they're just using it, but wouldn't you want to build things to the needs of the end user for what they're trying to get to?
Yeah.
So, because I see this problem happen where they're targeting business owners who are going to things, but there's just a reluctance to actually just like kind of market test to see the actual need of the users.
Right. Let me try to split the differences. There are two kinds of IoT products and services, or two layers of it. The first one is when you approach a B2B customer. And that's when you are dealing with mostly the business owner within their organization and the developers within the organization, or if they've outsourced it, those developers. And the developers and the business owner in that organization are trying to cater to the end user. So going to this slide is it refers to both of those layers. The leftmost side here, these developers are in a B2B use case where you are providing, again, there are the three layers. I think I should have put that. So you have the platform provider, you have end consumer product provider, and there you have end consumers. So these are applicable when you are providing as a platform to a business. Okay? And these are applicable, again, all this are applicable from you if you are a platform provider, but only these are applicable if you are providing an end consumer product, where you build a device and manage a fleet of devices and your customer is the end user. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because I think in my case, I not only build a device, but I also provide the solution. So
Exactly.
I just sell here, like they don't have to have developers unless there's some customization or integration to the data piece. No, they don't need to have developers.
Yeah.
In my case.
Yes, that's right. So if you are providing the end solution itself, then your customers will not be developers; they'll be end users directly. That's right.
How do you integrate third-party services in let's say a building application? Someone not really part of your product, but is coming in, getting trained to service your product. How would that go?
Right. So those would fall into. So this category, where you would train an installer. So typically in a building use case, you have your customer has a fleet of trucks where you go and install door to door. If it's not a consumer product where you just buy and install on your own, you have a fleet of installers. So those fall into after you have manufactured the device, and these split into two directions. One is you have a relationship or service providers as part of your network, or it goes through networks of Home Depot and other players where they have their own network. And for them, there are two tools what we provide. One is, again, we're going a little bit in the weeds, but there is a critical feature if you are a platform provider, you need to provide for these use cases, which is role-based access control. So that the fleet manager, when they manufacture and ship their devices, they create a role for these installers, because you don't want to give an installer access to your data, like reading the data or writing the data on a device. No, all you want to give access is initially to set it up and hand it over to customer. So there are the critical features. When you split the features in terms of personas, you can clearly add which goes where.
So at a high level, how is industrial automation, or factory floor was one of your three.
Right.
So how is IoT and industrial automation inside the factory different from the production management, manufacturing management, factory floor automation that we've done for 30 or 40 years?
So your thing was factory floor manager and, sorry, what was that?
Production management. Factory floor automation
Versus?
IoT in industrial automation today. I mean, we've been gathering data automatically from factory floors since the 1970s.
Right.
And had a feedback loop and blah, blah, blah. I don't know what the big difference is other than it says IoT.
Okay, if you're saying M2M versus IoT, it's a change of name mostly. But what is happening in the factories today, what is accelerating this change is the split between what processing happens locally versus what processing happens at a centralized location. For example, what I've seen in the past, you gather a ton of data, but the action on it used to happen, let's say you grab the data, ship it to a centralized, let's say a month, after a week, and not all the data, and then you processed it. Versus now, you don't do everything in real time, but you do a lot of things in near real time, which is, let's say, in a matter of seconds or minutes rather than days or months. That's a big shift, if you ask me. That's number one. The number two is more and more of these decisions are happening locally within the scope of a factory. So, for example, there's a customer, without going with their name, so they have a set of devices going down the factory floor, and they used to see for defects of the part. And typically what they did was they used to wait for someone to take an action, like a factory floor manager or a guy who is the business owner. But now what they did is pushed a anomaly detection algorithm on the edge itself. So based on what their trained model is, and it's a .pml Python file, they have pushed it on the edge, and that algorithm makes decisions right in there if it's the right one or not. Which is again not yet mission critical yet, but it's getting close to it, which is taking decisions right then and there.
Okay, good.
Any other questions on, and then we'll shift gears from here to, I've spoken a lot on these personas, and there's a podcast if you're interested with Daniel Elzadeh, so you can visit the website, and there's a podcast on more into digging deep into IoT and the personas. So the most important thing is, okay, we understand there is IoT, there's this hype, data hype, ton of money to be made, there's a ton of these verticals, and these are the products and features based on different personas for these verticals. But where is it going? So I'm going to touch upon 3 trends, and again, this is as time goes, there are more ideas and thoughts, so feel free to critique it, and we can probably have a debate on all these 3 trends. The first one, what I'm seeing is focus is now shifting from platforms or general services and products to specialized vertical-based solutions, which is important, like the industrial use case. Earlier, there used to be a platform and people used to say, okay, this platform is applicable for all the verticals. Not anymore. The products and services are very specialized for that vertical today. The home use case, the factory use case, the building use case are very targeted. And so the question is, why now? And the first critical point here is platforms are getting commoditized at a rapid rate. And if you look at it, the services and features which were specific to IoT and specific to IoT platforms are now part of most of the platforms, and there are like, last I looked, there are 300 IoT platforms. So that is no more a differentiation. Having IoT platform is not a differentiator. You have to grow vertically, build a solution for a specific area or a set of use cases, and that's going to add value to your products and services. Then the question arises, where are we seeing this trend? Is this being manifested in what we are seeing today, where IoT platforms are moving towards a specific solution? The first key area where we are seeing this trend is the utility market, where the energy meters are going, or you can see it is going across the curve, hype cycle, and becoming a reality. The growth is fastest in this sector, in general the energy market, but specifically the utility market. So that's trend one, which is move from IoT platforms to vertical solutions. The second is the shift to from IaaS to a PaaS, which is infrastructure as a service, to a platform as a service, with a lot of consolidation in the market. And the first signs of it were a few years ago when AWS announced saying, hey, we want to go in the AWS IoT space. AWS mostly provides like EC2 instances, big storage, computing, and other services, but they said we're going to give IoT specific services, like the device shadow, like the rules engine for IoT, and a lot of these specific services. And what that implies is even the first trend gets accelerated, which is IoT platforms are no more of can provide that value which it used to provide. You have to go to vertical solution because of even this second trend, which is infrastructure as service providers are providing now platform as a service with more specialized services for IoT, even for AI/ML, and a lot of these other verticals which is standalone before. And this is not just true with AWS. If you look at the general market, even including the company which I am, Samsung, Microsoft, Google, they are providing IoT specific services. So the big players are moving from purely infrastructure as a service to platform as a service, which is providing more of these connectivity and other solutions for IoT specific market. And finally, this trend is getting accelerated. If you noticed, a few years ago, Amazon acquired Telemetry, Samsung acquired SmartThings, but then recently you can see Software AG acquired Cumulocity, Google acquired Xylee. So the platform play is getting consolidated. Big players are building themselves and or buying key areas where they haven't built because they want to accelerate the time to market with their products. So if you look at all the big players, let's say 5 to 8 big players, including Amazon, Samsung, Google, Microsoft, Software AG, they all today have pretty robust IoT platforms of their own. Period. So if you want IoT specific services, they all provide it. So the differentiator for a startup, or if you're a product manager, is providing vertical solutions and other kinds of services.
So if you're targeting 2 separate verticals, you'll build 2 separate platforms?
Right. So if you're targeting 2 separate verticals, the current direction is you use a platform. Either you build your own if you have your own platform, or use one of the existing platforms and go niche on that set of use cases for both of those verticals. And more importantly, you provide more package service, like one of the previous questions. You don't want them to have a ton of developers developing on your APIs and SDKs. You want to provide more and more of these end dashboards, end products, end services, end solutions, which will provide more value to them in terms of time to market and addressing whatever their core business value is. But we have to go more niche because the competition is just all up now. Rather than infrastructure service, they've gone to platform. Any other questions on the second trend? All right, so let's move on to the third and the last trend, which is one of the biggest I have seen, and I've seen this prediction from the last few years, but now you're seeing that into action, which is move from the cloud to edge. And I'll correct, it's not just move from cloud to edge, which is it's a continuum from the cloud to edge. There is cloud piece, there is edge piece, and there is a nice split on what the responsibilities should be. But before we jump into it, it's important to understand these cycles keep coming and going. Like there's a nice, should I put my source? This is a nice article on TechCrunch, which is, it started with the mainframe in the 60s, 70s, which was all centralized, everything happened in a place. It started distributing client server with 80s to 2000. Then again, it became centralized with mobile in the cloud, which is what we are today in 2005 to 2020. It's all in cloud computing, everything is going centralized. But now the trend is, again, the early signs of the distribution is already being seen, which is it's going to the edge intelligence. More and more computing, more and more analytics is moving to the edge. It's not yet there, but the early signs are there. And where do we see the early signs? The first one is, Samsung launching something called Works as Smart Things. That's something which you can run easily on the edge. AWS announcing Greengrass, Google announcing similar SDKs. So you see all the industry is moving to the direction where you're not only providing the centralized services in the cloud, but also providing an equivalent or slowly allowing more and more framework for the edge itself. And what do you need for the edge? The number one use case where this is happening, which is the move to the edge today, is the edge analytics. And in edge analytics, specifically anomaly detection, as we saw before in the industrial use cases, and in the home use cases, there are rules which you want to get triggered on the edge. For example, a typical use case I see is what we call the sprinkler use case. So you want the rules for a sprinkler, let's say turn on at 8 or 9 p.m. and stop at, let's say, in 15 minutes to half an hour. If you do everything from a cloud, you run the risk of keeping the sprinkler on if the internet connectivity goes off for some reason. So you want those triggers, you want those use cases to run on the edge. If not everything, at least parts of it, which is very important inside because in factory, this becomes more and more important. You do not want the factory to shut down if your Ethernet or Wi-Fi connectivity goes down or LTE connection goes down. You want, that's number one. And also for speed of processing, you want the actions to happen in milliseconds rather than 1 to 2 seconds. And this can be accomplished if you move these edge analytics, so analytics to the edge itself. And you have the whole process, and there's many companies who are working on it. Bottom line is, with this new trend, it's not just the analytics, but the trend is all the computing which is in the cloud today, including storage, network security, parts of it will move to the edge, and there'll be more and more of this processing on the edge as we go, as we continue with the IoT itself. So to summarize, there are three key trends which we focused on. The first one is for the move to vertical solutions, which is more and more specific to use cases in a specific vertical in IoT. The second one is the big companies are moving from infrastructure as a service to a platform as a service with a lot of consolidation. There's a lot of acquisition. The platform companies are the ones which want to are winning are actually niching into platforms or solutions specific to verticals. And finally, the third trend is there's a lot of computing happening in the cloud today, but there's a lot of use cases, especially in building, factory, and many other verticals where there is a need to do analytics on the edge. And this trend is accelerating. It's not just the analytics. There's more which requires to be done on the edge than just analytics. That's pretty much it. Again, any questions? There's a survey, and also we are hiring. Just a plug. Yeah.
You talk a little bit about security.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially on the industrial IoT and
Yeah.
SCADA and all those.
Right. Security is a big topic. Let me see if I can make justice in this 2 minutes. But security, what we're doing, what we believe, and what I have provided is the trust starts from the hardware itself. No matter what you do once the session is set up, you cannot control it. For example, if the HTTP session is already set up, if that is compromised, the session itself, you can't do much. So the trust has to start even before that, which is in the hardware. So the thing which I advise to customers and companies I work with is to have a secure element on the device itself, which is where your certificates and all your security stuff exist. So that when you establish the channel, there is authority or trust, which is physically unclonable in the hardware where the security is robust. From that point on, you can't stop there. You have to provide the right amount of software, embedded software, the right versions of the protocol OpenSSL, and the second key piece after the trust is the cloud itself. So even though you use AWS or these public clouds, one of the key things what you need to provide is a way of auditing, and in case of some hack, you need to have a process in place, which is super critical. Because what we have seen is you get hacked, there are bugs, so the way to counteract is you audit using a third party as well as internally, plus you have a very robust process. If something comes up, you can react within 24 hours for fixing it and communicating to everyone. So we can have a longer conversation because this is a very broad topic, but the two key things to remember from IoT product or service perspective is trust has to be in device. So it has to have the secure element is the current one. You have PKI and all the different infrastructure, but at least have a secure element where you have the certificates. And second is audit and have a very robust process in case something goes wrong on the cloud side.
So do these standards exist, or are they still evolving?
Right. So for the hardware, on the hardware side, there's secure element and there's PKI infrastructure, which is pretty well known and pretty robust. On the cloud side, there are few standards which are evolving, which are encompassing not just the cloud but the whole end-to-end. One is ASVS, the latest version 3.1. Then there is for medical specific, your cloud needs to be HIPAA compliant, which is a normal thing. The industry standards, what you want to do is ISO 27001, SOC 2, and obviously these days GDPR. So we all need to do GDPR. So these are the standards which are typical. There's no right and wrong answer here. It's all evolving today.
Along the same lines, do you see blockchain being adopted for security?
Right. So blockchain. So we explored blockchain. There is a team which is trying to see where does it fit into IoT. Right now, I don't see a specific use case for blockchain yet. It's not very well tuned for IoT use cases yet. But I believe there is, again, the trust piece, which comes from the hardware. It can be, there is a way you can embed it, but I haven't seen something which I can use today.
So have you seen any trends where even the intelligence and the machine learning aspect is going from the cloud to the edge?
Like, give me
in the sprinkler case that you have given,
yeah.
There is a cost of embedding intelligence, additional machine learning, some chips or anything. So have you seen any trends where that is happening, where even the hardware devices with machine learning capabilities are being part of the
yeah. So I want to split into three parts. Because people, when you think of AI machine learning, you think about GPUs and all these high processing. That's no way close to what I'm talking. What I'm talking is, even on a simple microcontroller, you can push, for the sprinkler use case, you can push these timers. All you need is a basic timer which runs from start time to end time, that's it. That's for the sprinkler use case. But for a more industrial case where you want to run, let's say, anomaly detection, it's still not GPUs or any of those. All you need is a trained model, like a .pmm file, which you train using data on your servers. All you do is push that model on the edge. So you need some processing, but not in like tons of processing as you think. And the final stage, which is actually learning and training the model on the edge itself, it's happening, but only in factories which can afford a ton of gigabytes of memory and processing power at the edge. But those are very, very small use cases. But the first two are the big ones, which is basic rules and triggering and filtering. The second block is anomaly detection and predictive algorithms, which are trained in the cloud, and you push those algorithms. And the last is what I think is the big one, which is very rare. Is that?
Yeah. But just to tease apart that a little bit, I know there are several startups working on facilitating machine learning at the edge. And kind of the way to think about it is not only to have something that acts on it, but your data gathering node too. Yeah. For that feature machine learning.
I've heard of some use cases on AR, VR, especially in the 5G deployment scenario, where there is some sort of data analytics and AI and machine learning for AR, VR use cases.
Yep.
Question. You mentioned about the trend 1, right? By the way, I'm with Siemens MindSphere, so I kind of know. Given that you are part of a platform product, Arctic, right, like GE Predix or someone, the trend 1 requires a lot of subject matter expertise, right? Just offering SageMaker or Azure Machine Learning or Databricks alone in the platform doesn't get you that solution. I attended his session earlier, right? So you have a lot of data engineering, data scientists, subject matter experts. So how do we, for example, from a platform company, how are you working with like being Samsung? If me as Siemens, medical, if I want to build models and deploy to the edge or to the cloud and take sub-second decisions, these are mostly like services team who do it or business units within these companies, because it's very hard to push our platform to our own business units. That's why in my mind GE Predix went a little south because of that same reason, because they couldn't convince their own BUs to use Predix to build because they depended on Cloud Foundry, whatever, right? So they can use SageMaker or whatever. So I'm just curious as to how do we move, being a part of a platform company, move to that trend 1 that you are talking about, the vertical.
Right. So, the way I've seen GE is a great example where they try to create a different business unit, GE Digital, just to avoid that trap, which is each of the business unit tries to create their own platform. But then you fall into other trap, which you said, which is they don't adopt if you go central. There's no right and wrong answer. Right now, what I've seen works is survival of the fittest. So even internal Samsung teams, where we are pitching and there are other folks pitching, they choose what suits their business need best. So, if you are from a vertical business unit, externally or internally, the best choice for you is what is best for your business vertical, which is you want to build your own, you want to buy internal or buy external. So I've seen all three. There's no right answer there. Some companies do put some incentive to use your own internal one, but sometimes it backfires. So unless it's a well-tested third-party ecosystem which other customers are using, I would not recommend you force that within your business itself. You know what I'm getting at. And finally, so what is the right trend? I think, let's say you have a platform, you're selling to your internal or external business unit. What we have done and what I've seen in the industry is you have a support team which is vertical focused. Like for example, we have a support team which is very much specific to medical use case. Another support team, when I'm saying support team, these are solution architects and pre-sales and post-sales, which are specific to a vertical, but the platform is more horizontal. So if they see something missing in the platform, they can build on their own, and they know the domain very well when they are selling.
Are you guys building any industry-specific templates in your platform so that, let's say, medical devices solution consultants are using Arctic instead of AWS?
Right.
Machine learning. Are there like templates out of the box that they can leverage?
We do provide it as part of our ecosystem, which is through our partners. Because we are, as you rightly point, we are not the experts in each of these fields. And each of the use cases a world on its own. So we don't try to act that we know that space at all. We have partnerships with specific industry leaders for all of those verticals, and we have ecosystem.
You mentioned GDPR as a step. Can you talk, maybe you've seen how is GDPR kind of impacting IoT, or what are steps that you guys are taking to comply?
There are two plays here. One is as a platform and as a end consumer product company. From platform perspective, what I think we need to provide and what we are providing is tools so that manufacturers or consumer product companies can offer to their end users. For example, any customer who wants to delete their data or see what permissions they are given, we provide a SDK, which is based on a bunch of APIs and a dashboard. Now it's up to the manufacturer or the end consumer product company. How do they want to expose it? Do they want to expose it through a mobile app and web dashboard?
And enable them to do
exactly.
To comply.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, different perspectives. From platform perspective, you offer the tools and APIs. From a consumer product, you offer the final UI or whatever that is.
So from what have you seen in terms of the final in the end user market, like what are people doing, or what strategies are they taking aside from just like overwriting data or deleting, right?
Right. The first thing is there is a clean dashboard. I've seen at least based on our competitive, I've seen another 5-6 companies. Everyone has a dashboard. Okay. Where a user can use their existing authentication and authorization credentials, log in, go to the settings of profile, see, that's one page, and then delete or...
Got it.
Yeah. So that's number one.
So provide the visibility to the data,
period.
what they're already sharing, so then they can...
That's number one. I mean, you cannot even pass the thing. The second is have a dedicated security officer internally or in Europe. So that, there are many others. I have at least 10 steps, but those are the two top things.
So if you have a customer with industrial, they have products coming from different platform providers. Have you seen any use case of a platforms such? Like, let's say I have some devices in one dashboard in one platform, and other ones, but as an end user, I want to have visibility to everything and manage everything.
Right.
Cohesive manner. So have you seen any player?
Yes. The answer is yes, but in the interest of time, let's end it and we can take that offline. Okay. I don't want to keep everyone waiting. Right. Thanks, guys. Thank you.